C. Clarke once said, "Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic." And indeed, if you think about it, what to us looks like normal life, to our parents or even grandparents, the way we shop, the way we travel, the way we meet people, the way we marry or divorce, have children, get better or get sick, everything is really starting to look like science fiction. In that sense, technology is pushing our boundaries, from the smallest minuscule nano dimensions all the way to exploring the vastness of the space.
Spider silk has long been the holy grail of material innovation. It's strong, it's biodegradable, and it can be used in everything from cosmetics to clothes. Many people have attempted to grow the material in labs, but only a few companies have succeeded. Nestled in the outskirts of Munich lies one of them, AmSilk, which has raised more than $30 million in funding.
So AmSilk has been lucky to be one of the first ones worldwide to produce it. Today we're out of the labs, we're producing it on a multi-ton scale and selling this into different angles, from the cosmetic side to the medtech side to the fiber textile side.
Our material is produced via biotechnological means. So we're producing in huge stainless steel vessels. There are no animals involved, so the material is completely vegan. It's made completely of proteins. In the beginning, we were working with a new material, so we could not look up in the literature how it's done, so we had to develop everything on our own.
Currently, AmSilk's lab-grown spider silk is being used in 3 industries: cosmetics, medtech, and textiles. While a core of its business is cosmetics, it inked a deal last year to create a new spider silk-based material with Airbus that can be used in a high-performance plane.
What we want to do is we want to introduce our new material into existing technologies, into existing industry, to make existing products better. In the last decades we had very great material innovations, but mostly focused on fossil fuel-based materials. We see that these properties or these materials stay on Earth for decades and even longer. So our products are of course completely biodegradable, but that doesn't mean that they just biodegrade as soon as you go to the outside. But on the other hand, it can be used in everyday life. It's very durable, it can withstand, of course, humidity, temperatures, sun, this is not a problem. But as soon as you put it in your waste, it biodegrades over a certain time period and then it's completely gone.
AmSilk doesn't have a consumer business. Instead, it's developed a B2B model where it sells its silk gels, sprays, and other materials to other companies that can incorporate them into their products. But this is a slow process. It can take years for a partner to adapt the silk technology.
Well, we handle a lot on the cosmetics side. They're typically quite fast time to market, can be between 1 and 2 years from first pitch to product in the market. On the other hand, there is lots of large corporations like Adidas, and with those companies it takes longer because they have lots of internal requirements which they have to go through. So you talk about from first pitch to product in the market around about 4 to 6 years. It is very important for our partners or for the success of new inventions that partners don't have to change anything in the way how they produce. Otherwise, you can have the greatest invention and it's not gonna go through.
So I think it's very important not to think about the next 5 to 10 years, but also think about your kids, how they will emerge or how they will live in a world in 50, 60, 70 years. And we have to think about what we can do, what we can make better on the product side, on the material side, but also on the same page don't exploit our planet much more than we already have.
Equals invention, and let me just stop here. Innovation equals invention. Often people mistake these two things for the same thing. Innovation equals invention. They are not. Innovation is something that generates value for the world. It makes something faster, better, cheaper. It gives someone some great satisfaction. An invention is an idea, a technology, a patent. In and of itself, it does not generate value. So these two are not the same thing. And sometimes you see them interchange, and that's not correct. So innovation equals invention times commercialization. So when we look at this equation of innovation, something of value, it requires a new idea, and then it requires someone or some organization that is going to commercialize that idea and to make it of value to the world. So it's important to understand that an idea by itself is not valuable. Ideas are cheap. It's the commercialization when combined with it that makes them extraordinarily valuable. So while sometimes the idea, people think that this drives innovation, it's in fact the commercialization aspect of it that's very, very difficult. If you look at the most innovative company in the world today, which I would argue is Apple, the underlying inventions that created Apple, great innovations, starting with the Mac, did not come from themselves. It actually came from Xerox PARC. It was Windows Icon Mouse Pointer. That invention they commercialized to create innovation, which created terrific value in the marketplace and for their customers.
So the 4 fundamental steps we'll go through is first, identify the features of your technology, and I'll tell you why that's important. Second, identify broad problem areas and broad application areas where these features might solve some problems, okay? Step number 3, as a team, get together and do your opportunity matrix and understand and prioritize which of these problems to attack first. And as the 4th step, understand the customer ecosystem around it, because it might be that you're missing out an important influencer or a user in this system that you haven't thought of immediately that could be crucial in bringing your technology to the market. So, knowing the 4 steps, we'll use an example of a technology called hypersonic sound to get a bit of life into these 4 steps. Hypersonic sound, in essence, did for sound what laser did for light. In other words, it allowed people to control the direction of the sound and how far it can go, okay? So going back to our first step, identifying the features of the technology, why is that important? It's important because oftentimes it turns out that you as a scientist are working on only one precise feature and advancing that feature, and you might be taking all the other features of that technology for granted, and other people might understand, boy, it's really in the combination of these features where the real value for the market lies. So some of the features you can see on the slide. When it comes to the hypersonic sound, it's about how loud it can be, it's about how far the sound can travel, it's about the bleed or the precision of the sound, it's about whether you can use it indoors or outdoors. Listing all of these features and identifying the features of the technology, first important step. Knowing the technology features, we'll move into the second step. What are some of the big problem areas where you could actually apply some of these features? Thinking about this hypersonic sound technology, oftentimes the situations and problem areas that students will identify when working together are all the possible situations of noise pollution that you can imagine. For example, one of the big areas they'll often identify is the noise pollution of personal entertainment, where couples or families fight about which program to watch, which channel to watch, especially when traveling along together. They say the kids and their channel is really irritating to the parents and vice versa. Another example they might come up is, for example, in the theaters. So not noise pollution situations, but solutions where silence is really important and only a precise person needs to hear a specific information and nobody else. A theater whisperer might use this kind of a technology. Other situations like that could be museums. For example, they'll say often that carrying those audio guides can be really painful. Wouldn't it be nice if we could just walk in front of the exhibit and hear tailored information for that exhibit? Opportunities are boundless. I'm sure you could come up with 7 or 8 more applications as we speak. But listing all of them is important because otherwise you might be ending up with a suboptimal opportunity that doesn't lead you to the best possible market space to discover. Indeed, moving into the third step, how do we evaluate among all of these possible opportunities? On the other dimension, think about your team. What passions do you have? Which problems do you really care about? Which skills do you have in the team that might be a good match for fixing that problem? This will give you a nice space where you can align the opportunities that we mentioned, and you might say, well, museums are not such a big passion of mine, but you know what? The area of personal entertainment, this is the one where we want to go for. It will ultimately depend on your team, which one you decide for, of course. And this is the beauty of entrepreneurship, finding the right opportunity for you. Our fourth and final step is then about finding the customer ecosystem around it. So if we think about the personal entertainment space, you could think about being only a technology provider where your customer is really going to be maybe a company like Bose or any other audio manufacturer out there. Yet you might think, I want to integrate even further and talk directly to car manufacturers. Even more so, you might think about the actual end user and think about going through retailers to get there. Bottom line is that every technology and every product has a deep value chain, and it's really important to understand your customer, get out of the building, see what their pains and problems are, because oftentimes you'll be surprised and find a new opportunity just from those conversations. It's not always take away from this journey. I think number one, you understood that technology push can be a very challenging yet very exciting journey ahead of you. Yeah? It's important to be prepared for that journey and equip yourself with a good diverse team. It's important, second, to understand when is it time for divergent, open, brainstorm thinking, and when is it time to zoom in and focus and prioritize. Indeed, prioritizing is key, and if you look at the example of beyond prioritizing and having a good team, it is important to know your customer. Never underestimate that step, and always understand. A customer doesn't wake up in the morning to buy a better solution, to buy a better drill. A customer wakes up in the morning thinking of jobs they need to get accomplished. They want to be quicker, do things easier, be more efficient, and do it at a lower cost. So think about the jobs the customer needs to get done, and I think you're on a good way to get your technology into the market. I wish you the best of luck. One is to go out there and spot a need, spot a pain in the market, see that people are unsatisfied in doing something, they're having a hard time doing something, and then tailor a solution accordingly. One example that maybe comes to mind is car sharing, right? People started understanding that urban dwellers like you and me living downtown have a lot of costs associated with owning a car, maybe are not ecologically satisfied with owning a car, and indeed don't need that car on a daily basis. Maybe public transportation is good enough. At the same time, every now and then, owning a car can be very helpful, yet the rent-a-cars were not as easily accessible and quite expensive, offering no flexibility in terms of their usage. Taxis are very expensive and lack the autonomy of actually sitting behind the wheel. And this is where entrepreneurs understood the market niche and the gap in the market, the inefficiency that the current solutions created, and tailored the solution accordingly. Does that mean that there was no technology involved? No, of course. Some of the technology was tailored towards meeting that solution, but ultimately it was the technology that followed a problem in the market.
Push-pull strategy is a well-known business paradigm. Put simply, a company that uses a push approach develops a product or service and drives sales through marketing and advertising. An organization that uses a pull approach, on the other hand, develops a product or service in direct response to an existing customer demand. In the information age in which we're living, it's much easier for manufacturers to create products that cater to consumer desires. Digital technologies make it much easier for corporations to get direct access to their customers and allow them to respond to their needs more quickly. Dell transformed the personal computer industry with its pull supply chain strategy. It provided customers with a platform to build their own computer on demand from a menu of parts, components, and consumables. The company saved money by maintaining low inventories of finished goods and attracted buyers to its product through quick and easy online ordering and home delivery. In the cosmetics industry, the YouTube beauty blogger revolution has created a platform for pull rather than push marketing. After watching a makeup tutorial on, for example, creating the perfect winged eyeliner, consumers seek out the products used in the video. No matter what the industry, corporations are increasingly being pushed to do more pulling.
A new wave of innovation is fueling a radical change in fashion. Wearable technology, data, automation and lab-grown materials will have a major impact on what people will be wearing in the future.
We are just seeing a pace of change which is frightening, but it's also incredibly exciting for the future of fashion.
In the 1960s, synthetic materials like polyester took off, creating new possibilities for fashion. Now, the convergence of new technologies is opening up previously unimaginable possibilities. Self-styled fashion scientist Dr. Amanda Parks is in the vanguard of the industry's latest reinvention. She heads up innovation at FT Labs, a venture capital firm that invests primarily in disruptive fashion tech startups.
The future of fashion is a mixture of combining new material technologies with all new forms of business models.
Among these startups, the race is on to find the next generation of renewable materials that can be grown in a lab.
So one example of this is Bolt Threads, which creates lab-grown spider silk.
Traditional silk is produced from insect larvae that form cocoons, most commonly silkworms. But rather than relying on these insects, Bolt Threads is creating silk in test tubes.
So they've taken the DNA out of a spider, just the part of the DNA that creates silk, and transformed that into a microorganism, into a yeast. And you can think of it like brewing beer. So as they feed the yeast, as it brews, it creates silk protein.
Biofabricated materials remove the need for animals and insects, and they are a more sustainable and efficient way of producing raw materials.
You're able to speed up this process, put it into a controlled environment in a laboratory, and have a lot more control over what you're growing and how.
Other companies are creating leather alternatives. Rather than using animals, scientists are creating biofabricated materials from pineapple leaves and even mushrooms.
Another example is a mycelium-based leather. So the root structure of strains of mushrooms can be grown synthetically in a lab, but they're all natural fibers. When you think about the convergence of what technology can do with this in terms of the future development of materiality, and so we really have the opportunity to make huge global change by changing the means of production of materials.
The convergence of fashion and technology also provides opportunities to transform not just clothes, but the people wearing them. Myant is a company that's pioneering the creation of clothing that can monitor your every move.
We call it textile computing. Some other people call it smart fabric. Essentially, it's an interactive fabric that could sense data from you.
So-called smart fabrics are being touted as the next frontier of wearable technology. Yarns are paired with electronic sensors so that essential data can be captured from the human body.
This is a men's boxer. You can see the sensors embedded on the band and on the body. Within seconds, it will start transmitting your ECG, temperature, your movement, your respiration.
To create clothing that can monitor the wearer's health and fitness, Myant has brought together teams of people that have not traditionally worked under the same roof.
We have the advanced research, engineers and scientists at nanoscale technology, electrical engineers, mechatronic engineers, software, AI. We wanted them to interface and to interact with fashion designers, with pattern makers.
Smart fabrics could radically change consumers' relationships with the clothes they wear. The staff here use big data to analyse political, social and environmental trends in order to predict the hot new looks of tomorrow.
If we think back over the last 5 years at how the fashion industry has changed, think about the way that we shop compared to the way that we used to shop.
Technology is driving an explosion in consumer choice, as well as the bewildering array of clothing design and creation. To keep up, the industry is also turning to technology.
We are for sure in the midst of a digital revolution. AI, the idea of kind of machine learning and big data. How do we start to sort of synthesize all of these new technologies and start to make sense of it, both in terms of industry, but also in terms of the consumer?
Machine learning technologies are now central to fashion forecasting, quickly spotting patterns among the ever-growing volume of data. From biotechnology to demographic shifts, predicting trends is no longer an art, it's becoming a science.